our church is cool. We got people that we're friends with, like they have kids and they're normal and they still go to church every week too.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Welcome back to Transfiguration in Oakdale. This is a podcast that we try to do every single week. Every once in a while we miss a couple weeks. We get a little busy. But tonight we have Matt Mulligan with us, and I want to remind all of our audience, Transfiguration exists to bring all those in the East Metro to Christ, the source and summit of our daily and eternal lives. And if that is a little confusing to you, I want to embarrass Matt before we get started. I did not tell him this was happening. But
oh boy,
the Mulligans, in our discussions about how can we at Transfiguration best portray what bringing Christ to the East Metro looks like, the Mulligans got brought up, and I brought them up. Because of...
I'm sorry, Missy.
Their summer get-togethers.
Hey.
And I thought this is a great way to invite our neighbors in the East Metro to just hang out with us. And if we end up talking about Jesus, great. If we don't, that's fine. And hopefully our houses have Jesus all over them when they come over. They see Jesus all over, and the next time we can invite them to church, and the next time we can invite them to a talk or a man night, smoker poker, ladies night, whatever else. So I wanted to spotlight the Mulligans, and maybe if you could talk for a little bit about what was the impetus to do those summer gatherings, and are they coming back this summer? I'm just kidding. I won't put any pressure on you to bring them back.
That's the $1 million question.
Right now, the governor will not allow it yet.
Yeah, right, yet.
So I don't want you to get arrested.
Hopefully next year. Hopefully 2022 that we'll start that up again. But no, the background of it was that so last year, 2019, I guess 2 years ago now, 2019, the summer, every other Sunday we had essentially an open house, Sunday afternoon to evening, and we provided dinner. And we said, hey, each week, come if you want, just RSVP ahead of time so we can buy enough food. And we served people food. They brought sides and things to share if they wanted, or, sometimes we had like lemonade or beer or something.
Kids to share?
Kids aplenty. There was like this giant herd of kids running around in the backyard, and the parents are up on the deck, and, just really hanging out and connecting with one another. And the whole idea behind that was just to find a way to casually just get people in the same community talking to one another.
Mm-hmm.
And we had just moved to the neighborhood, and we're still there now. So we didn't really know anyone, and it was like, how can we informally meet people without being creepy? and it was like, hey, look, we're going to do this thing, no pressure, come over if you want. And you don't have to. If you do, just let us know, bring something to share, whatever you like, and no commitment either way. We're not hurt. There's going to be 30 other people running around. So, and it was great in that. Like we had been previously living in a area. I can't call it a community. It wasn't a community because we met like a handful of neighbors in 5 years. That people just came, they got home, they shut their garages, and you never saw them outside. So it was like you never could meet them. Mm-hmm. Plus, we were on a busy street with no sidewalk, and so there was no way to interact with people. It was just cars going by. So then coming to the new location, we said, okay, we're going to be very purposeful about reaching out to people around us, because that's how we're going to just build up a better society, is make something so simple that neighbors want to see each other. And at the end of the day, if they just want to see each other, they're going to want to help each other. And what does that become? Well, it's the definition of love. When you help someone else, you're loving them. And to build up that little bit of love in the community, who knows what that could do. So,
yeah, we're there. So for the person out there that's like, oh, that's great for the Mulligans, and Matt is sanguine, so he's cool with having people over at his house and entertaining and all that type of stuff. So if you could speak to maybe even the ease of it, or some of the difficulties you had to overcome, or some of the anxieties that you might have had before that first one or the second one or whatever?
Well, my wife is not a sanguine.
No.
So she would get overwhelmed with crowds, but and that still was a hurdle for her. Even by the end of the summer, she'd be wiped out at the end of the day. And that was just something that she said, oh, okay, I'll deal with it. It's one day every couple weeks. It's not, it's not going to kill me. I have some friends here, so I'll be fine. And, so that was a challenge. The very first one, we were just like, oh my gosh, like running around crazy. And it was because we felt like we had to host these people.
Yeah, it's like feels like a grad party. It's in the summer. You got to clean everything up. Got to fix the deck.
Right. And we didn't have to host them. It was like we were opening the space and just let people do their thing. And like, hey, if you need something, come ask. Otherwise, here's the deal. I'm not going to babysit you while you're here. Especially the little kids. I'm not going to babysit the kids. But that was really challenging at first to be kind of relaxed about it. Mm-hmm. It's interesting opening up your house to people that you don't know super well. But there's nothing it's like a own personal insecurity that, once you do it, you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad. And then, so like the benefit of it was just awesome. Like it was awesome.
Yeah, we came to 2 or 3 of them. I don't remember.
Yeah.
We didn't come to the first, we're, I don't know, out of town or too cool or something. I don't know. But we came to at least 2 of them, and it's just relaxed. It felt very human, just like we're humans. We have kids, or you don't have kids, but we live in the same neighborhood. Let's just hang out together. We're communal people. Let's just do that thing, and we don't have to make it. Doesn't have to be a themed party or something. Just come and hang out. I thought it was wonderful. It was really great. I hope it inspired others to do it as well. And I hope you listening to this, it inspires you to. Now you don't have to do the exact same thing, but I think, talk about it as a family. What can you do in your neighborhood to get to know some people, or invite them over for Lord's Day, or whatever. Invite your neighbors for your birthday party. Like, ooh, that's weird. Like, I don't know why that's weird. They live right next to you, for goodness sakes.
It got so easy to invite people though, because we had this thing. And so we went to a local brewery once, and it was us, the family out there. We had all the kids running around on the patio, and we met these few other families. They were in the same position. The mom and dad, we were having a beverage, and the kids were playing, and it was like, hey, you got kids, we got kids. So, this is going to seem weird, but we do this thing every other Sunday. We'd love you to come. There's going to be a bunch of other people there. Don't worry. You can, we'll introduce you to the people we know. And like, we actually got people to come to it that we had literally just met weeks before, and they're like, hey, sounds fun, I'm in. But it was so easy to be like, having that in place, so we're doing this thing, and that was all it took. Was just that simple little invite.
Now, did you go to your immediate neighbors and invite them as well? Or so we came a couple times. I wasn't sure who was like an immediate neighbor, or you met him at the bar.
We did. Yeah, we did.
Cool.
Yeah.
So is that awkward as well? Or
Yes. Yes. And how we've talked about it, like next, like we said, probably not this year. I think just people are still going to be skittish, and, us included, like, hey, what's going to happen? What's going to be allowed, et cetera. But next year, or whenever we're able to do it again, that we would make it very much like a neighborhood thing. Like,
yeah, you got the park like right behind your house too. It's easy to. You could have 100 people there, and they'd still be 10 feet apart if you really wanted to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You just have to come together for the barbecue. That's about it.
Because since then we've met a ton of especially other families that live nearby us too. That 2 or 3 we just met. We met another family this week. They were walking along the path, and they had 4 little girls, and got to chatting with them, and they live 3 blocks away, and so it's like, hey, this is perfect. Let's get to know you guys. That's how we're going to do it. Really, really get to know your neighbors, because it was something that we sorely, sorely missed in our first house, and we were very purposeful about it this time around.
I also thought it was cool that you also invited some people from outside your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was on purpose to kind of like, fill the pot full of church people, but it is kind of cool. Like, oh, all these other people, are they from the neighborhood? And they're like, oh no, they're from the church. Like, our church is cool. We got people that we're friends with, like they have kids and they're normal and they still go to church every week too.
Yeah. No, in that regard, it's a great way, like a great way to enter into the relationship with the church, with our, Transfiguration here, that you can say that because it's a topic of conversation that, I'm not out there hitting someone over the head with a Bible, but we prayed before we ate. Like, that was, we were Catholic because we said, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, bless us, O Lord, before we ate dinner. And it was like, all right, everyone, we're going to pray. And
it wasn't the first time you did it, because the kids could do it too. Like the kids were like, Dad, you never pray. Why are we praying now?
Yeah. Wasn't embarrassed by that one. Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, the kids are, that's like, oh, this is normal. We pray before dinner. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's
and I was just like, hey, if you don't want to pray along, just please, I just ask you to be respectful. And, I added like a little side prayer for my, Lutheran friends on top of it, my Protestant friends of the, Lord,
Lord Jesus, be our guest.
Well, no, not the cliche one, but the spoken from the heart, Jesus and, me are buddies and talk to the Lord, kind of thing.
Good.
So us Catholics don't always do that. So
No. We're the church of the both and, though, so we should.
We should.
We ought to.
We should, yeah.
All right, that's enough embarrassing the mulligans. Missy can
Thanks, guys.
Listen later with a red face. and I hope that listeners and you can think of ways that you can do something similar. Invite people. I think you can hear that it wasn't really that hard and it's not that complicated.
No, I ordered Costco pizza.
You don't have to make it crazy.
No.
And it's not that hard.
It wasn't fancy. It wasn't, yeah.
And you know what? If they don't come over, that's fine. It's okay. We're a little excited in our neighborhood that there's like 3 young families that just had moved in or just had babies. So we're kind of excited. We don't really have a neighborhood either, but we're kind of forming a nice little community there. And my wife and I run past their house enough that it'd be creepy if we didn't talk to them, actually. So we've been saying hi quite a bit recently.
Yeah.
Well, enough banter. Matt wanted to talk about a subject, so he's getting out his notes and his Summa here. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right.
But he wanted to talk about a subject, so I'll kind of let him take it, and then I'll just be the backboard to bounce stuff off of potentially. Or maybe I can play devil's advocate. So I'm pretty good at that sometimes.
Whatever you'd want. So
I'll let you introduce the topic for this evening, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Thanks, Justin. So I'm going to call the topic this evening, If God Exists. If God exists. Not, we're getting quite existential here, so excuse me for that one, but it's been something it has been on my mind quite a bit the last few years. I would call it, a personal struggle of mine in my faith. To be honest, the biggest question is whether or not God exists. Like that, to me, that's the entire crux of it. And so that's why I'm here. I want to talk about it tonight because I think that it is the fundamental question that every human being must ask themselves or struggle with, either in this life or the next. And so frankly, it's in my logical, reasoned mind that therefore it is the most important question for someone to ask themselves and to find an answer to themselves.
So you posit the question, if God exists, not does God exist.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that?
Yeah. So if I don't know if your listeners are familiar with Pascal's wager.
We did a poll last week, and 20% of the people know about Pascal's wager.
So callers call in, and the lights are lighting up right now. So anyways, Pascal's wager. Blaise Pascal, he was a mathematician. You know him for Pascal's triangle from your geometry classes back in high school. But a mathematician, theologian, philosopher in I think the 1700s is when he was alive. But he came up with a philosophical theory that said, either God exists or he does not. And you have one of two choices to make. That basically either there is an afterlife or there is not an afterlife. And so which are you going to choose while alive? So mathematically, if the afterlife is infinite in time, that it's outside of time, therefore it is infinitely long, that you are even the smallest chance that God exists mathematically, 0.00, infinite zeros times an infinite long infinity means that you should act as if God exists, because the flip side of it is that there's zero chance God exists. Well, then you're not wasting anything. You're not losing anything by believing that God exists, because there's an infinitely great eternity waiting on the other side. So you can probably do it better to explain it more simply, but that it was kind of like this mix between a mathematical equation and a philosophical thought. And he said, at the end of it, he's like, I'm going to choose to act as if God exists in my life. But his question was, does God exist? And looking at it that way. So for me, it's not does God or does God not exist? I don't believe that I will ever be able to answer that question with 100% certainty. That I will not be able to know for a fact that God exists.
Yeah, we need to take that at some point, the Kierkegaardian leap of faith, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're never going to prove it. God is not to be found, unlike some atheists think. He's not a being amongst other beings. Yeah, right. He's not like, there he is. Oh, there he is. He's not Sasquatch or some weird flying spaghetti monster. He's not a thing to be quantified because he's not a quantifiable thing.
Right.
So you can't say we're not going to be able to prove it. So,
right.
So I think you're asking the question, if God exists, then how should I live my life? Or is it just if God exists? Like what does that mean for me if he does exist? Because Pascal's wager, maybe try to make it a little brief. Like if God exists, so if I live as if God exists, I gain eternity. But if and he does exist, okay. But if I live as if God exists and then he doesn't, well, I don't really lose much. Maybe kind of wasted a couple days here on earth, but no big deal. But if I live as if God doesn't exist and then he does, I've lost everything, and I've only gained this really small, finite amount of pleasure here on earth. So, they call it a wager because he's like, if I'm a betting man, I'll put my money on, okay, I'm going to live my life as if God exists. And if he does, awesome. If he doesn't, no big deal. Right?
Exactly.
Is that kind of it?
Yeah. No, that was much more eloquent than I could say.
I never knew he got into the numbers thing. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's probably why you liked him.
No kidding, right?
You like the numbers.
Yeah.
I love numbers too, but I didn't know that. So if God exists, then what?
Really, it means that I'm in trouble. and I say that like half-heartedly, but on one hand, it's true, because if God exists, my next question is, okay, so then what? Well, then it really means that God, this infinitely supreme being outside of space and time, is there, is present.
Mm-hmm.
And do I act or think like that? I act in a manner that reflects God, this supreme ultimate being, master of the universe, as if he is there? If he exists, do I act and think that way?
Yeah. I like, are you a Jordan Peterson watcher?
I'm not.
Okay.
No.
You know who he is, though,
Yes.
right? Jordan
Yeah.
Peterson is for those listeners, the 10% that don't know, we did a poll about that last week as well.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson is a psychology professor in Toronto, Canada. I think he's kind of just a speaker now. I don't know if he actually works for the University of Toronto anymore. But he has been asked many times if he believes in God as well. And he kind of finds it, and I'll show you why I'm kind of putting this out there, because he finds it a very peculiar question, because he says, I would have a really hard time having the audacity to say that I'm a believer, because my life does not reflect it. So he kind of says, like, I don't know if I can ever say I'm a believer. I think he's having an existential struggle with this question, and I think a lot of his interviews actually show this, and he's kind of broken down and talking about God's mercy and his love for him most recently, and talking about that the Catholic Church actually makes the most sense. Of all the kind of religions out there, the Catholic Church, for him at least, is a psychologist and evaluating it outside of like its... I think he uses quite a bit of philosophy, but, his psychological evaluation is that the Catholic Church is the most accurate to the existence of God. If God exists, then it's the most accurate to how we should actually function as humans if God does exist. So he has this very difficult question saying that he's a believer. And I've actually been extremely convicted by his interviews lately in saying that, because I think he's kind of saying the same thing. I'm saying with my lips, God exists, and because of that, there's a lot of things that, if God exists, philosophically, we can posit a number of things.
Right.
He's the unmoved mover, or whatever he is. He's the first mover. And because of that, he's, outside of time. He's not a thing. He's pure existence. A number of those things. You can look them all up in the Summa. I think 60% of our audience reads the Summa.
That was 2 weeks ago, Paul.
Yeah. You can read all of those things, but he's saying, like, to say that I'm a believer is actually really difficult. And I've kind of been in my head agreeing with him, like that's a really difficult thing to say. And that's actually kind of why Father and I did a podcast about are Christians hypocrites, because I kind of was thinking the same thing. Like, we say we believe in Jesus, but oftentimes my actions do not say that. And there's a breakdown, obviously.
Forget Jordan Peterson, even Gandhi. Gandhi said essentially the same thing. I just pulled it up, but I remember this quote that he said, if all Christians acted like Christ, the whole world would be Christian. Yeah.
It's not even a question.
Right.
I know. And I think one of the biggest things that I take out of it when you talked about it, when you're kind of initially volleyed it out there, was I need mercy. Because if God is all justice, I'm done. Like, my existence is gone. I'm clearly not worthy, or ever will be worthy, of being with him in heaven. I've said no to him all the time, daily. I say no in my selfish existence, and I need to root it out. I mean, the first thing I thought of when you were talking about is like, man, if God exists, my first thought is then I need mercy.
Yeah, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. If God exists, I think you said that, didn't you?
I'm in trouble. Yeah, I'm in trouble.
Like, I need mercy, because I deserve. Ugh.
But it's so fascinating to me that's where we go to, immediately, is that you need mercy. Why do you need mercy? Like, why is there this idea or thought that I have done something wrong, and then therefore I'm in trouble for doing it? Like,
yeah, I think naturally we have this idea I'd be indebted, like to my, I'm indebted to my parents.
That's exactly.
If I created myself, I wouldn't need mercy, because we're getting a little off the hook here, the cuff. I think if I created myself, I wouldn't need mercy, because I'm the arbiter of what's good or not good for me. Mm-hmm. I created myself, no big deal. My parents created me, co-creation with God. I owe them something for that, and not just because they birthed me or something and then left me on the street, but I would owe them for that as well, but I owe them my life. They gave me my life, and then they took care of me too. And I owe them a lot more than that. And especially now that my mom's, getting older and in need of her kids to take care of her a little more, man, I owe her my life. I mean, she drove me to the hospital how many hundreds of times when I was sick, and changed my stinky diapers and loved me when I was a jerk, I owe her a ton. So I think that's my natural thought, is that if I'm not my own creator, then I owe something to someone else.
Yeah. And that's exactly where I was going to go with it, is it comes back to, okay, what is it? If God exists, what does that mean for creation? Well, it kind of comes down to, I've thought of so far 3 things. That one, everything begins with God and ends with God if God exists. Number 2 is that all things point towards God, because they are moving from the beginning to the end. And in that direction, they are pointed in a direction, whether you can think of it in physics and entropy and you name it, of the natural order of things, but they are pointed towards the end result of God. And the third thing that it means is that this God is the author, the beginning and the end of creation, the Alpha and the Omega. I exist. How did I come to exist? It's through that God that ultimately, which I am pointed towards at the end. How does that go through my day? What my minuscule percentage of my day do I realize that? I can tell you it's pretty small, right? Even if you spend, the best of you will spend an hour in prayer, right? Like each day. Well, 1 hour out of 24, do the math. It's less than 5% of your day that the only reason for your existence is this God that you are supposedly owing everything to. And to, your point that you owe them everything, because that is the reason of your existence. And how often is that at the front of our minds?
Yeah, maybe even a less than an hour.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
yep.
For most people, they're not sitting in prayer for an hour a day. And that's, I'm not.
So all you sinners, you better get your butts to... No, I'm just just kidding. No, I think it's very convicting to even think about that. And I think this is, I have been doing the Bible in a year with Father Mike Schmitz, and, they're talking about, I'm only 45 days in, even though it's like day 80 or something. I don't know.
You're all right. You can catch up.
Yeah, I'll be fine. It's out there. But they're going through like Exodus and Leviticus, and how the people of God put stuff in the place of their house, in their lives, to constantly remind them that God exists and he loves me. I forget what it's called, but the little thing outside their door that they touch or kiss as they leave their house every single day, it's got a little script in it wrapped up. I forget what it's. The 5% that know that are listening are really mad at me right now. But they touch it before they leave their house every single day. They wrap the scripture around their arms. They, so many things. And Gosh, I kind of want to get one of those little things for our door at our house for sure. And I want to do more of those things at my house. Like we have crucifixes at our house, but sometimes you just have them up like artwork and you barely even look at them, like maybe I have one on my desk that I kiss every day just as a reminder, I think it's you've convicted me even just listening to say, I got to find some things in my life that constantly remind me that I'm a creature.
Do you know what I found is one of the simplest ways to do it?
Liturgy of the Hours?
No.
Oh.
I said simple.
Simple. Oh, stick a medal in your pocket?
No. Well, I do carry a rosary in my pocket everywhere now. I've been doing it for probably 8 years or so. Just because of that, I stick my hands in my pocket.
I like the jingle of my medals on my chest.
Yeah.
That reminds me. No, what are you going to say?
Your computer password.
I've done that before. Yeah.
And it's choose a phrase.
Yeah.
But if you choose a phrase, I've been choosing various Catholic phrases, whether they've come up in prayers or a book or you name it. That
we know all Mulligan's passwords,
right?
now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Jesus loves me.
Jesus loves me.
Yep. Yeah.
But it's this easy way of pausing, like to type in a password. It's so simple. It's so simple.
I've done that before. I found I kind of it becomes like nothing to me, but it's a good one. What else? I still use my password that the IT person gave to me as my temporary password when I was 19 years old. So I changed it just a little bit. That's about it.
Yep.
The numbers. What are some other things?
Besides having icons in your house, I think that's great. But then moving them around too.
That's a good one.
You just kind of, because eventually, like you said, if you just get used to the password, change it up more often, move your icons around just to catch your eye differently, a little bit differently.
When Teresa was little, we would bring her around the house to all the pictures and ask her who the people were. So, but we don't carry around the house as much. But even tonight, she talked about, she was telling, 3-year-olds their imagination's silly. So she's like, I went to school today and Mary was my teacher. And we're like, Mary, like the mother of Jesus? And she's like, yeah. And she taught me this. And she spun around like a ballerina. And
in 15 years, you're going to find out she had an actual apparition.
Yeah, probably. She's going to make us all look bad. Yeah. And then I went to the picture, like the icon of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and I was like, "This Mary?" She was like, "Yeah, she taught me to do this." I was like, "Okay, I don't think Mary appeared to you and taught you to spin around like a ballerina." But we'll see. Yeah, she was like, "She's the Immaculate Conception." No, I was like, "Come on."
Yeah.
No, I think it's a good one. Passwords, icons.
Your phone lock screen. I've seen some people do that.
Yes, I do that. The phone lock screen.
Having reminders. Putting a reminder on your calendar to pray. Like I had a friend that I worked with back at the accounting firm a long time ago that he had a little reminder to say the Angelus, because that was his thing that they did in his family. And so he kept it going. 6 a.m., noon, and 6 p.m.
Yeah. I forget the saint that said, I'm going to pray until I stop sinning. If I just surround my life with reminders of my, creatureliness and how much I need God's mercy, I think that's also kind of the downfall of being comfortable is you just don't think you need God's mercy. Yeah. And I don't really need God. I got a good job. I got a sweet house in the suburbs with a park behind it, and we got a cool boat. And you're like,
we don't have a boat.
Yeah, I know. I didn't want everyone to think it was your family that I was talking about.
I do this cool summer social thing.
Yeah, they got 3 kids. One's named. No, just kidding.
Yeah, right. Bernadette, James the Greater.
I think it's just a good thing. It's a good reminder. I think that's we wear scapulars. I wear the necklace. I found the scapulars, for me at least, kind of like fall out of my shirt too much, and then they annoy me. and I don't think that's what Jesus intended for me to be, is annoyed by a scapular. So my mom got me a medal with St. Justin on it, and I have a couple other ones, and it jingles a little bit, which I thought would annoy me, but it's actually a nice little reminder. We wear wedding rings. We have little crosses. Sometimes I carry the finger rosary in my pocket. Because I like the finger rosary. I can do it while I'm running and stuff. I can do it while I'm driving even. The bigger one, I don't know. I definitely can't do it while I'm running or biking, but I can do it while I'm the finger one. What else before we close this out? What other things?
I was going to say that, you just mentioned it too, is your reminder, like we're talking about all this stuff, and it's really, there's kind of a simple reason for it, is that to remind you of your creatureliness that you just said.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put that perspective on and you step into that lens, that frame of mind, you see your place in the universe, and you're pretty dang small, no matter how important you are.
Even from an airplane, you're pretty small.
You're pretty small from an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
And to have that, to me, when I put myself in that spot, it really causes a rush of humility. It really causes a rush of humility in myself. And so the more often that I can remember my place in the universe and have that be in the front of my mind, the more likely I am to live in a humble manner, a befitting of that place.
Befitting of potentially even calling ourselves a believer. Potentially. We're going to work with fear and trembling. We'll work out our salvation, right?
Amen.
All right. It's been awesome to have you, Matt. I need to go humble myself in the sight of the Lord by playing some basketball and letting some young bucks kick my butt a little. I like the physical humility is great because it's inevitable. Someday even the great Tom Brady is going to have to retire because he's just not going to be good enough. I mean, he might be 60, but someday his physical nature will not
get the best of him.
It won't be good enough. But sometimes, oftentimes our intellect and our own will, it is a lot more difficult to be humbled by our intellect, and we can be prideful a lot easier in that way, and that's some reason why I go play basketball and why I swim, because I'm really bad at swimming. It's super humbling to know how slow that I swim, and to play basketball with some young kids and realize, whoa. And I think it's a good thing to intellectually recognize that too, that the Lord loves me and He exists, and because of that, man, I need
live as if He exists.
I need His mercy, man.
Yeah.
Matt, it's been awesome to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Listeners, if you have topics you want to talk about, let us know, and we'll even let you talk about them if you want to. Otherwise, we can talk about them. Father and I are going to talk about next week how to live out our motto here at Transfiguration, how to be a light here on the east side, to bring Christ to the east side. And I hope it's a good one. Someone brought it to our attention, so we're going to talk about that and hopefully have some good tips for you to live out your faith life here on the east side and bring others to Christ. God bless.